My name is Erica Straley, and I'm doing my Com101 speech on the eviction moratorium. The style is topical, and this will be an informative speech. These are my note cards. And this is my audience. The coronavirus pandemic has changed American living as we know it. Here in Las Vegas, for the first time in history, casinos, businesses, and schools were all closed. Streets were emptied. Tourism came to a stop. Many jobs were lost, leaving thousands of Las Vegas residents at risk of losing their homes. Staying home and avoiding human contact became a state requirement or a mandate for all non-essential workers. Since it began, many people continue to live rent-free across Nevada, but the eviction moratorium cannot last forever. A moratorium is a legal authorization to debtors to postpone payment. By the end of this speech, my hope is that you will be able to empathize with the tremendous effect that this pandemic has brought on the stability of fellow Nevadans through no fault of their own. You should be able to see homelessness in a different light, because the eviction moratorium is truly preventing thousands of families from ending up on the street. People don't just become homeless. Major events, catastrophic events, and losses happen to people that force them to this place. The information that I will provide to you in the next few minutes is current and up to date from credible sources, specifically from the government website of Nevada's Governor Steve Sisolak. During this time, I will help you to better understand the effects of unemployment during the pandemic and how it has contributed to the loss of more than just money, and how Nevada is trying to combat the looming housing crisis and help its fellow residents in preventing them from being displaced. First, we will look at unemployment numbers at the start of the pandemic. Nevada unemployment was at an all-time low pre-coronavirus. According to the Department of Numbers, for October 2019 to February 2020, Nevada's unemployment rate was 3.6 to 3.7%. That's roughly 56 to 58,000 reporting being unemployed. The national unemployment rate for the same time period was 3.5 to 3.6%. In March of 2020, just a month later, when the pandemic hit, unemployment rose to 6.9%, with 107,760 reporting unemployment. Fast forward to August 2020, unemployment hit a staggering rate of 13.2%, with almost 200,000 reporting unemployment. It was only the beginning of a domino effect that would leave many scrambling for income, and what we now know to be the CARES Act would be created to help those struggling due to loss of income. CARES Act stands for Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security. It was signed into office by President Donald Trump in March of 2020. The CARES Act made it possible for many to qualify for assistance of those affected by the pandemic, and under normal circumstances, who wouldn't be able to qualify for unemployment assistance. Directive 008 was signed into law March 2020 by President Trump and followed by 9 other states, including Nevada. It provided a temporary halt on evictions and foreclosures due to the severity of the pandemic. On June 2020, Governor Sisolak signed Directive 0025. That said, the eviction moratorium would end on September 1st of 2020. and eviction and foreclosures could resume. By September 1st, it was clear that the economy had gone into a recession, and it seems that Governor Sisolak realized that thousands of Nevadans were still unemployed and unable to make rent, soon to be on the street, and add to the growing homeless population. Emergency Directive 031 was then created so that tenants could stay safe and remain in their homes. The directive does state that the obligation to pay rent is not void. Renters are still responsible for non-payment. There also were programs and agencies that were set in place to assist with the payment of rent. After hearing the drastic numbers of those unemployed as a result of the pandemic in Nevada, you begin to realize that many are literally in survival mode. In closing, keep this thought in mind. The eviction moratorium is a lifeline, keeping families from becoming homeless. Nevada unemployment by the pandemic was at an all-time low. Before the pandemic was at an all-time low, 3.6%. Tourism was flourishing. The restaurant and hospitality industry was booming with jobs. The pandemic can be likened to the Great Depression of our day, causing many to rely on government assistance and leading to programs being created like the CARES Act, the directives we discussed, the eviction moratorium, all of which are temporary solutions. Finally, let's address the elephant in the room. What's going to happen when people and families begin to get kicked out of their homes? Is it possible that everybody under the moratorium can catch up to months in back pay of unpaid rent? Without sustainable income and lack of employment, it is inevitable that many families will be displaced on the street and put on the street. We need a permanent solution.